The long wait for Euro 2020 is finally over. In the build-up to the big kickoff, we are doing something special. We have scoured the Twitterverse to find a representative from each of the 24 nations competing in this summer's European Championships. We will be recording a preview with each representative who will be sharing views on their nation's hopes and expectations throughout the tournament, and most importantly, the fantasy assets we should be looking out for. Welcome to Euro 2020 Happy Hour. Hello and welcome to our Euro 2020 preview series with myself, Sham, otherwise known as FPL 2 Guys 1 Cup on Twitter.
And myself, Rob, otherwise known as FPL Panda.
Rob, we've got another guest tonight, and they are representing a country that were runners-up in the 1992 Euros, and that is Sweden, and our guest, Fredrik. Fredrik, welcome.
Hello. Thank
Evening,
you so
mate.
much for having me.
How are
Excited to be
you?
here. I'm all good. All good. How are you guys?
Fantastic. Right, Fredrik, let's start off with you talking about yourself a bit. So,
Sure.
what football team do you support? Where in Sweden do you live?
Yep.
Do you play FPL? Just tell the listeners a little bit about you.
Sure. So my name is Fredrik. I'm from Stockholm, Sweden, and I've been a huge football fan since I was maybe 7. I started playing when I was around 6, 7, and been watching football pretty much my whole life since then. And I don't know if you can see the picture behind me, but unfortunately my team is Arsenal.
It's all right.
15 really painful years, but at least I had a couple of good years before that with Fredrik Youngberg in the team. And FPL, I've been playing FPL for 3 seasons now, but I played some other fancy games before. So I played like the Euros and the World Cup before, and had some good seasons in them. Well, not seasons, but good results in them.
Nice. Well, Fredrik, let's talk about Sweden.
Yep.
Because that's why we're here. So, how did you guys do in qualification?
I think we did pretty well. We came second in the group, and I think we had, as you can see, that we had 3 draws and 1 loss, and we only dropped points against both Norway and Spain, who both came first and third. So I think we had a pretty good run, to be honest. And 23-9 goal difference, pretty decent. And it was a crazy game. I remember, I don't know if you can see the one, 3-3 against Norway. I remember we were 2-0 down in like the 70th minute, and then we turned it around to 3-2 in like the 90th minute, and then they scored in the 96th. 3-3.
Wow.
That was an insane game, yeah.
Maybe that
shows, but yeah,
shows a bit of character though for the team to come back from 2-0 down.
For sure. But it was a big letdown when they equalized in the 96th. But yeah, it was I think it was pretty good qualification. I wouldn't say, I mean, if you look at the teams we had in the group, it's not like we had the most difficult group either, but still decent.
So who would you say during the qualification period were kind of the main players that did well for you?
I think there are a few to mention. One of my favorite players, which kind of goes under the radar, is Viktor Claesson. He usually plays like left mid or right mid, and he scored a couple of goals. I think he scored, you can see there, like 3 goals in the qualification. I really like him. And then obviously we have Emil Forsberg, who is one of our main creators in the team. He had a really good season in Leipzig a couple of years back when he was like the top assister in Europe or something. He's pretty good. And then we've had Alexander Isak has been pretty decent. Obviously Lindelöf, our centre back for United. He's very decent in the back. And also we have two really good goalkeepers. We have Robin Olsen, who plays for Everton, and also a guy called Christopher Nordfeldt, who is really good as well.
Were there any players you think that didn't have a great qualification, but you've got really high hopes for in the Euros?
As players,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, there are a couple of players that I think that are not like regular starters, but they're doing really well with their clubs. That I think if they get enough game time in the Euros, I think they could definitely get some returns. And one of those players is Kulusevski, for example. I don't know if you know him, but he plays in Juventus, and I think he scored in the cup final now last week. I think if he gets enough game time, because he's not a regular starter, he usually comes on in the second half.
All I know about him is he gets a lot of yellow cards.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's a dirty player. Yeah. But it's pretty good. I think that if he gets enough game time, I think he could definitely get some good returns, especially if you look at the fantasy perspective as well.
So what would you say from the Sweden national side that the strengths and weaknesses lie?
I think the way Sweden play, obviously the last 2 years when we haven't had Zlatan in the team, they've been playing, as you would say, like more better together, like chemistry wise. But we don't really have this star player that could like have his magic in a game and just dominance a game on his own. So they play very well together. I think we have a very good chemistry. The players know each other very well. We have good build-up play. So I think that's a good, and we have pretty good defense. We're really solid defensively, I would say. But the thing we lack is a clinical striker. We don't have a striker that is really clinical.
I suppose all of those years with Zlatan there, like when did he was it 2002 that he really broke through, or was it 06 that he really broke through?
No,
at the World
I think
Cup?
both of those. The World Cup, I think he was okay in the World Cup. I think he was pretty good in the 2002, 2006. I don't think he was that great. 2008 Euros, he was really good. And
so
then
I remember
2012,
like, from when he sort of really like broke onto the scene as like an international superstar. I remember he scored that that ridiculous back heel where it was like up as high as his shoulder.
Yeah.
But from that moment, like Sweden have always had this clinical striker, and he's probably scored one of the greatest goals, just outrageous wise against England. When he scored that overhead kick from like 40 yards out. And
no, he's insane. I always say it like looking at all the top players in the world, I think that Zlatan's top 30 goals is better than most top players' top 3 goals. Like he scored so many cracking goals, it's insane.
I mean, I'm a United fan, and in let's say we had him fit for maybe just less than a season when in the 2 seasons he was at United, but he still scored some great goals. I'm a huge fan of him. I think he's brilliant. But yeah, we'll talk more about Mr. Ibrahimovic later on, maybe
in a second, because I'm about to ask this question. Right. So, Fredrik, you said that you don't kind of have the main player now. Originally, so at the time of the recording, Ibrahimovic, Zlatan, is not in the squad because of injury, right? So I know that you did choose him as your talisman, but because he's not in the squad, we've kind of had to change him. So do you want to talk a little bit about the talisman that you have chosen?
Yeah, sure. Like I was thinking about who, because as you said now that I mentioned to you as well, I don't really think we have a main standout player in Sweden, and the obvious choice would go for like Lindelöf, the captain, because he's like solid. He definitely gonna play, and he plays in the big Manchester United, like a big team, or Emil Forsberg, just because he's been a fixed star as well before, but it's not really like a Zlatan level. But I think the one I've chosen is Alexander Isak, and the reason I chose him is because I think it's just a more exciting player, to be honest. And I think he's definitely going to be involved in the goals. Like now when Zlatan is gone, I think he's going to be the main striker up front for sure. And a lot of attacks are going to go through him.
Okay, so let's just think, because at the moment we don't know whether or not Zlatan's going to be in it. I know the time that this podcast comes out, people will know. But if Zlatan does come into the side, how does that change any, Isak as well as any other players' potential fantasy output? Is it become better or does it become worse, do you think?
It's difficult to say because Zlatan, he only played 2 games now in the qualification when he came back from retirement. So he only played 2 games with Isak. So it's difficult to say their chemistry. But in those 2 games, I think it looked really good. And Zlatan, if you compare him to before,
didn't he, in those 2 games?
Yeah, he
was involved.
He got 3. Exactly. He got 3 assists in those 2 games, I think. And he could have gotten even more. So I think the difference from Zlatan came back now from when he played before. Before he was like the main man, everything was revolving around him. Other players didn't take their own initiatives; they just looked to Zlatan. But now when he came back, I think he's trying to keep it a little bit low key because he's just coming back and everything. So he played more like a playmaker role rather than just give me the ball and I'll do everything on my own.
Right.
So I think he would definitely benefit Isak because Isak is definitely not the one who's going to be dropped out when Zlatan comes back. It's going to be Marcus Berg, I think, who's going to play now instead of Zlatan.
Okay.
So I think it would benefit Isak more to have Zlatan than to have Marcus Berg for sure.
Okay, so before we go on to, I guess, fantasy options and talking about players into some detail, what are your thoughts on how Sweden will do in the Euros? And, you know, Rob's going to bring up the group now, which will kind of show your qualification if you're going to qualify. How do you think this is going to pan out?
I think, I mean, obviously, I'm hoping for to go through this group stage. I think the first game against Spain is definitely going to be the most difficult one. And I mean, if you can get a draw there, I would be really happy. But I think we're gonna probably lose that game. But I think against both Poland and Slovakia, we definitely have a chance to get something in both those games. And since they have, I think isn't it the 2 best third placed teams goes through as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. So even if we don't win, even if we get 2 points, even 3 points, I think there's definitely a chance, good chance to go through to the knockout stages anyway. So I think we can go through. It just depends on how the Slovakia and Poland game goes. But I think out of those games, Slovakia we should definitely beat, and Poland I'm just hoping as well we get something from there.
So I guess that Poland game is quite key, right?
It's definitely key, yeah. And I would say that our teams on paper is kind of similar to Poland if we had Zlatan, but now they have the Lewandowski and we don't have Zlatan, so maybe they will edge it a little bit.
Like my thoughts on like this group is like, yeah, Spain are the obvious sort of front runners in the group, and then you've got Slovakia at the other end of the scale. I know we've already spoken with the Slovakian rep, and he isn't very hopeful for the Slovakian side for the tournament, and
He is or he isn't.
he isn't.
He's not.
He's not at all.
Okay, yeah.
So I do think it's between both Poland and Sweden for that second spot. I personally, I'd edge Sweden ahead. Not that
Yeah.
I didn't say something different to the rep from Poland. I think that overall, I think you've got man for man slightly better squad. But I think it's all going to be about that game on the final match day of the group stage, where I think both of you will likely have 3 points, and it'll be a kind of a straight shootout between the two of you to see who goes through. But then Spain are one of these teams that they have had tournaments where they've turned up as favourites and not done very well. So they're not the team they were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting group. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything you said, and especially the Poland-Sweden game, the last game. As you said, maybe we have better each position per position, but since they have Lewandowski, I mean, if he gets a good chance, he's probably going to score. So they do have that amazing player that could definitely win the game for them.
He's not going to get that chance. You got Victor. You got Big Victor.
Yeah, we got Victor. Yeah, we get big Victor. Yeah,
I'm a Man United fan, so.
Yeah.
Right, so let's talk about some fantasy options and players. So I know that you put some stats together, Fredrik, that you wanted to kind of talk through with regards to the players. So you want to pick out some players and some stats that you think are quite important. You want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. So I was looking a little bit about like how they perform for their respective clubs over the season, and for the players who are playing in the Swedish league, because we have a different, like we started league in March or April. So I looked at the last season for those players because we only had a few games now. But I just looked at the players, like how many points they've scored and the average minutes it takes for them to get an assist or a goal. And there's definitely some interesting players here. Like obviously one of the main mans in Sweden is Emil Forsberg. And if you look at his stats, he has 9 goals and 6 assists in 40 games, which is pretty decent. He averages 1 point per 140th minute. And he's definitely one of the most creative players in the Swedish team. So I think that he from like a fantasy perspective in the Euros, he's definitely going to be a guy who's most likely going to be involved in our goals because he's the creator now in the team. When Zlatan is gone, he's going to be the one creating the chances. And I also like Alexander Isak, as I said before. He also has pretty good 16 goals and 2 assists in 43 games. Doesn't sound too great, but I think it's still pretty decent.
It's almost.
I think all the.
It's just under. What was it? It's a goal every 2 and a bit games, 3 games. It's not bad, is it? It's not great, but it's not bad.
It's not bad, and I think obviously he's played more than just his 43 games, more than just the games in the league. But I think all the goals are scored in the league as well. I think so. So I don't think he scored in the Europe and stuff. But yeah, but I think he averages 1 per 1, less than 2 games, 1 per 160 minutes, and I think he's definitely going to be, now when Zlatan is gone, he's going to be the one, the main goal scorer. I think the one is going to be stepping up to score the goals. So I think from a fantasy perspective, he's definitely going to be the main man to choose if you want to have a goal scorer from Sweden. And then there are a couple of other players. I think one player that's really interesting to look at is the guy who came in for Zlatan now when Zlatan is injured, and that's Jordan Larsson, who plays for Spartak Moscow. And he scored 15 goals and 5 assists in 30 games. It's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, 1 point per 130th minute. The thing about him, since he just called up for the squad, and he hasn't played much of the qualification stuff. I don't think he's played at all in the qualification now. I'm not sure how much he's going to play. He's definitely going to be a bench player. But he's really explosive and really technical. And I think if he gets game time as well, I think he could definitely make it difficult for opponents because he's so quick.
I mean,
and really
there's always the potential that, like, we're recording before we've seen any friendlies or anything, and if he took his chance in a friendly, could that sway the coach to maybe give him the chance? Maybe not against Spain in the first game, but maybe against Slovakia in the second game.
Yeah, I think so for sure, definitely. I think, as I said, Marcus Berg and Isak is going to be the 2 stars, I think. But definitely, if Jordan Larsson is showing some good form in the friendlies, I think he could definitely get the game against Slovakia, or at least get a lot of minutes, like from the second half.
Okay. Any other players there that you think you'd pick out that had a good season that is worth keeping an eye on at the Euros?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned before, one of my favorite players in Sweden is Viktor Claesson, who plays like a left or right mid. He plays for Krasnodar in Russian league. He scored 8 goals and 6 assists this season in 33 games. So he has a pretty good record as well. And I think he's only scored. You had some stats on how many scores he scored in the national team, or maybe I have it as well here. Yes, 9 goals in 44 games. It doesn't sound that much, but like it feels like
just under 1 in 4. It's not bad for a midfielder.
It's definitely not bad, and it feels like he scores more often than not. He always gets in good positions, so that's a player I really like for Sweden. So I think he's going to be a massive differential because I don't think anyone is thinking about him. So I think he could be a good choice.
In terms of defenders, are there any defenders that do quite well from a goal scoring point of view or assist point of view that would be worth kind of keeping an eye on?
Goal scoring point of view, no, not really. I think Nilsson Lindelöf, what has he scored? He scored 3 goals in 40 games for Sweden, 1 goal in 44 games for Man United. He's definitely not the type to score goals.
And Grankvist, the penalty scoring defender, is no longer kind of starting for you guys, right?
I don't think so. Because he hasn't played for the national team for like 2 years. So I think it was a surprise for many people that he even got called up. So I don't think he's going to start. I wouldn't count on it. And even if he starts, I don't think he's going to take the penalties anyway. Okay. So I wouldn't count on him. I think from an assist perspective, though, I think the 2 wingbacks, Ludvig Augustinsson, and perhaps Mikael Lustig could definitely chip in some assists with some crosses. But their record is not like amazing either. I think Augustinsson has 6 assists in 28 games for Werder Bremen. It's pretty good. But he has 3 assists in 32 games for Sweden. So it doesn't happen often, but I think they could potentially get some. But I wouldn't count on the defenders from a fantasy perspective to get some points.
Okay, so let's talk about I guess the players' pricing and just fantasy with the Sweden team. So I guess first two questions to ask, which we ask everyone because all the listeners I know are really interested in it, is firstly, are there any players in the side that have been listed as defenders, but actually they're playing midfield, or any midfielders that play like basically out of position players? Firstly.
Yeah, I haven't looked at all the players named from the squad, but I looked at the players like starting players or like the main players, and I didn't see any weird positions. So I wouldn't think there are any. Maybe one of the bench players could be, but yeah, I don't think they're gonna get enough game time to be considered anyway.
Okay, and I guess the other question is: are there any players that you think are really underpriced that you think you expected to be X amount, but they've turned out to be really cheap?
Yeah, I think like the way they have priced the players this year, like in this game, is that they price them how good they are to their team relative to other teams. So I mean, the main Swedish players, we have no player over 8.5. But if you look at Germany, and obviously they have players like Cristiano Ronaldo is 12 million or something. So obviously, if you want to get the main goal scorers, our maximum is going to be 8.5, which is pretty good, I guess. But at the same time, if you look at that price bracket and compare it to other teams, I mean, if you look at Forsberg, for example, he's 7.5 million. You can get Chiesa in Italy for 7 million. You can get Frankie de Jong for 7 million. So relative to others, maybe not that great. But I think one player that really stands out, and he's not going to be a starting player, but that's Jordan Larsson. He's 5.5 million, which is insane. But obviously, it takes up a striker slot, which maybe not be favorable. But otherwise, I think from just valuable, I would say Isak, 8 million. Definitely the main goal scorer, and having a main goal scorer in a team for 8 million, I think is pretty decent. And also, I think Victor Claesson 7 million is not too bad either.
So are you picking any Sweden players? And if you are, which ones do you think you'd be going for and why?
Yeah, I think I haven't considered too much Swedish players, just as I said, because they're kind of priced the same as players in other teams. So, for example, I really like Victor Claesson for 7, but he's 7 million. And for that money, you can get Mount, you can get Chiesa, you can even get Gundogan for 7.5. I think there are other players that might be better. But the players I am considering, if I'm going to go for Swedish players, is Victor Claesson, just because I think he gets in too many good positions, and he scores, as we said, every fourth game. I think he's going to be involved in something. And I'm also thinking Sebastian Larsson. We haven't talked about him yet, but he's the penalty taker. And he's 6 million, and he's definitely starting every game, and could definitely get some couple of assists as well. So I think he's actually a good value price player for 6 million. So I'm considering him, and then I'm considering Isak just because I think he will score the most goals in our team.
So I guess from a defensive point of view, are there any options worth looking at in defense?
I think it's the same thing there, because since they're priced similar to other players that might have better potential. I think I looked at Agustinsson for 5.5 because I think he has the highest potential of getting assists and maybe even a goal. But for 5.5, there are other options in other teams. But I think if you want to go for Sweden defense, I think Agustinsson is the best player for 5.5 because I think he has the highest potential of getting some attacking returns.
Okay, Rob, have you got any questions for Fredrik?
I think, I mean, is there anyone sort of under the radar a bit that you think like going to have like potentially could have a good tournament and like get some returns that maybe like you either haven't spoken about before yet, or that the listeners won't know about? Because as you said, there's so many like cheaper. It's a very cheap squad.
Yeah.
So is there like anyone that like you think, oh, if you need someone that's a bit cheaper that maybe is a bit of a differential, is there anyone like that?
I think I already mentioned him as one of the, but I think the biggest differential is going to be Victor Claesson, as I talked about. But I think another player that I'm hoping he's going to get a lot of game time, and it's also my ones to watch, Kulusevski, as we talked about as well. I think he might, because I looked at obviously a lot of people haven't started picking their teams yet, but both Viktor Claesson and Kulusevski were 0% picked right now, so no one is picking them. So I think Kulusevski and Viktor Claesson will be the two biggest differentials.
What are their prices?
Viktor Claesson is, I think both of them are 7, yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, I mean, I think Jordan Larsson could be a great differential as well for 5.5, but I'm just worried how much he's going to play.
Yeah, I mean,
so there's a lot of Larsons, so I guess we need to clarify,
It's
right?
all the strikers.
Okay, so the striker is a good option, and then not Henrik Larsson.
The midfielder is also a good option. Either the midfielder or the striker, because the midfielder takes the
There's two Larsons in.
There's two Larsons. They're both Larsons are good options for the price.
Okay,
definitely.
Yeah,
not as explosive as Larsson. It's not Henrik Larsson, but Jordan is actually Henrik's son.
Ah,
okay, interesting.
Yeah, so he has the.
I mean, one of the things, especially with the forwards, I think, is because there's such a wealth of options. I think it's hard to try and because you've got the likes of, like we've mentioned, Ronaldo, Kane, Lukaku, Immobile, Insigne. I mean, I could roll off 10, 20 names before I even hit one of the Swedish strikers. I think the money you're going to be wanting to save the money. I mean, my view is you're going to be wanting to try and save the money on a couple of defenders and a couple of midfielders to then be able to go slightly bigger in the forward line, because we do see generally in international football the forwards tend to score more. Like the proportion of goals tend to be pushed further towards the forwards than midfielders and defenders. For some reason, that's just how it goes. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'd be taking a punt on Jordan Larsson.
No,
but I mean, you have mentioned Seb Larsson, Viktor Claesson, and Kulusevski, and maybe because they're that slightly bit cheaper, maybe it's so like if you don't fancy a Mason Mount or a Federico Chiesa, maybe going for one of them instead as a little differential to try and get one over your mini league opponents and your overall rank.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I wouldn't take up a striker spot with a Swedish player either, because there's so many good options. But as you said, if you want to go for a midfielder, maybe if you want to go for Seb Larsson, he is the penalty taker, but he doesn't get too many attacking returns. It's outside from penalties, I would say. So if you want to go for an explosive player that I think is going to be involved in goals, it's definitely Viktor Claesson.
Perfect. Rob, anything else that we've forgotten to ask Fredrik?
That we've forgotten, that you've forgotten.
That I've forgotten.
We've got the penalty. I mean, we know that you said Sebastian Larsson's the penalty taker, or it could be Zlatan if he's fit. We're sitting here on the 23rd of May, so he's got a week to prove his fitness. By the time this is released, everyone will know. Who takes like the other set pieces? I mean, if he's fit, whoever's taking the set pieces, it's huge for them, because he's obviously the tallest footballer like ever known to man, and like he's a huge asset to have on set pieces. I mean, who takes the corners? Who takes the free kicks?
I think so. They mix up a little bit, but for free kicks, it's definitely Emil Forsberg is definitely on them, and also Seb Larsson sometimes as well. Seb Larsson actually had a really good free kick record a couple of years back in the Premier League when he played for Sunderland, but I haven't seen him score too many free kicks recently. But I think it's Seb Larsson and Emil Forsberg taking the free kicks. And obviously corners as well. And then sometimes, I guess Lustig takes corners as well. But I would say for set pieces, it's going to be Emil Forsberg, I would say is the best one, or Seb Larsson. But the thing is, we don't score too many goals from set pieces, so I wouldn't count them getting transferred there. But I think Seb Larsson, because he has the penalties and takes free kicks.
Yeah.
in that
Okay.
case.
Fredrik, is there anything else that you think that we should know about, or the listeners should know about Sweden before we finish up, that you haven't spoken about yet?
From an FPL perspective, or
just generally from a Sweden perspective, FPL perspective, whatever perspective?
No, I think that we are a kind of underrated team. I think we saw that in the World Cup last time. We came to the quarterfinals and we lost against you guys. I think we could surprise.
Oh
many
yeah,
people.
I forgot to give you some shit for that.
Yeah,
Shit.
that was horrible. I think if we had Zlatan in that game, maybe we could have had a chance. But yeah, we didn't have any clinical strikers, unfortunately. But you guys are better. But yeah, I think we could surprise many people in this tournament. I don't think we're gonna be one of the biggest dark horses in this tournament, going to like the semifinals. But I think we could definitely surprise some teams for sure.
Perfect. Right. I think that's it. Nothing else to add, Rob?
No. That's yeah. It was, I mean, the Swedish side, like, historically have always been sort of hard, like a tricky side to beat, and sort of one of those teams that are kind of they're not at that top tier. They're not in like the lower tier. They're like in this middle ground. They tend to go up and down in this middle ground bit. But yeah, it's good to know that there's some options there, especially if like they do get through to the group. Like if they get through to the round of 16, you're going to need a couple of cheaper options that are starting games to fill your squad out, and they like players like Victor Claesson and Sebastian Larsson could be the type of players that would be good for the round of 16 if they do get through.
Indeed.
Yeah, I agree.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Fredrik, for joining us. We really appreciate
you,
that.
guys.
And hopefully we can get you on for some of the live streams if Sweden get through to the quarterfinals and beyond. To the listeners, thanks very much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe on our YouTube and look out for our next installment. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.